In the summer of 2020, during what should have been a transformative and inspiring journey of personal discovery, Emily Johnson, a talented 28-year-old architect from Seattle, Washington, embarked on a solo luxury cruise across the Mediterranean aboard the magnificent Ocean Serenity, a grand vessel renowned for its elite international clientele and opulent amenities that attracted successful professionals from around the world. Emily had chosen this particular 14-day voyage as a celebration of her recent promotion to senior architect at a prestigious Pacific Northwest firm, and as an opportunity to find creative inspiration by studying the historic coastal architecture of ancient Mediterranean cities that would be visited during the carefully planned itinerary. The ship's route included enchanting stops at Venice, Barcelona, Nice, Marseille, and the breathtakingly picturesque Amalfi Coast, destinations that Emily had dreamed of exploring since her university studies in architectural history and design theory. As a passionate photographer with an artistic eye for architectural details and urban landscapes, Emily maintained a meticulously detailed travel journal throughout the first week of her journey, frequently posting stunning photographs and thoughtful observations on her social media accounts, sharing her excitement and wonder with friends and family back home who followed her adventure eagerly. During the elegant evening events, she attended cultural lectures about Mediterranean history and architecture, mingled cordially with other sophisticated passengers from various countries, yet maintained her characteristic degree of privacy and fierce independence that had always defined her personality. On the warm evening of July 15th, after returning from the last scheduled shore excursion in the romantic port city of Naples, Emily was seen by multiple witnesses walking alone on the ship's promenade deck around midnight, wearing a flowing summer dress and carrying her expensive camera bag filled with the day's photographic treasures. She had mentioned to her dinner companions that she planned to return to her luxurious cabin on Deck 8 to organize her photographs and write in her journal before sleeping, but mysteriously never arrived at her destination. When morning came with its usual bustle of activity, concerned cabin stewards discovered her elegantly appointed room completely empty, with all her belongings remaining perfectly undisturbed, except for one troubling detail. A small black leather suitcase was conspicuously missing from the walk-in closet. Before continuing this story, tell us in the comments what country and city you're listening to this story from. The ship's crew immediately launched an exhaustive search operation, utilizing the latest security technology available aboard the Ocean Serenity, including comprehensive review of hundreds of hours of surveillance footage, systematic interviews with dozens of passengers who had interacted with Emily, and thorough physical inspection of every accessible area of the massive vessel from the engine rooms to the uppermost observation decks. Despite these intensive efforts conducted by the ship's professional security team, in coordination with experienced maritime authorities, no trace of Emily Johnson was discovered anywhere on board, creating an increasingly ominous sense that something terrible had befallen the promising young architect during the night. Her last known communication had been a cheerful phone call with her younger sister Sarah, back in Seattle just 3 hours before her disappearance, during which Emily had reassured her family of her safety and excitedly described the magnificent architectural wonders she had photographed in Naples' historic district. The cruise line immediately reported Emily's disappearance to local authorities in Naples, as required by international maritime law, sparking a coordinated multinational search effort that would eventually cover vast stretches of the Mediterranean coastlines using advanced radar technology, helicopter patrols, and naval vessels from multiple countries. Italian Coast Guard officials launched an immediate investigation, interviewing crew members and passengers, analyzing the ship's electronic systems for any anomalies, and coordinating with Interpol to determine if Emily's disappearance was connected to any known criminal activities targeting tourists in Mediterranean ports. Despite the deployment of sophisticated search equipment, including underwater drones, thermal imaging systems, and specialized recovery vessels, the massive search operation covering hundreds of square miles of open Mediterranean waters yielded no evidence of Emily's fate, leaving her family devastated and authorities completely baffled by the mysterious circumstances. Days stretched into weeks, weeks expanded into months, and months accumulated into years, without any credible leads or breakthrough discoveries that might explain what had happened to the talented architect during those crucial midnight hours aboard the Ocean Serenity. Emily's parents, David and Margaret Johnson, refused to abandon hope for their daughter's safe return, dedicating their life savings to funding private investigators, maritime search specialists, and forensic experts who might uncover clues that official authorities had missed. They established the Emily Johnson Foundation to raise awareness about the alarming number of tourists who mysteriously disappear during cruise vacations, providing support to other families facing similar heartbreaking circumstances while maintaining relentless pressure on law enforcement agencies to continue actively investigating their daughter's case. 4 agonizing years passed without any significant developments in Emily's case, during which time her mysterious disappearance became one of the most perplexing and widely discussed missing persons cases in modern maritime history, attracting attention from international media outlets, documentary filmmakers, and amateur investigators fascinated by the complete absence of physical evidence or credible witnesses to her fate. The Johnson family maintained Emily's Seattle apartment exactly as she had left it, preserving her architectural drawings, photography equipment, and personal belongings as a shrine to their missing daughter, while continuing to organize annual memorial gatherings and awareness campaigns. Emily's professional colleagues and former classmates from the University of Washington established a scholarship fund in her name to support aspiring young architects, keeping her memory alive in the field she had loved so passionately. Her sister Sarah, now a successful attorney, had taken a leave of absence from her law firm to coordinate the ongoing private investigation, working closely with maritime security experts, international law enforcement agencies, and victim advocacy organizations. In June 2024, exactly 4 years after Emily's disappearance, the case took a dramatic and completely unexpected turn when Marco Benedetti, a veteran Italian fisherman operating out of the small coastal village of Portofino, made a discovery that would fundamentally change the entire investigation and provide the first concrete evidence of what might have happened to the missing architect. While checking his automatic fishing equipment anchored to a remote navigation buoy approximately 40 nautical miles from the Italian coastline, Marco noticed something unusual entangled in the heavy cables that secured the buoy to the ocean floor. Using his boat's mechanical winch system, he carefully brought the object to the surface, revealing a waterlogged but remarkably well-preserved black leather suitcase that had obviously spent considerable time underwater. The suitcase bore distinctive brass hardware and a high-quality construction that suggested it belonged to someone with expensive tastes, characteristics that immediately reminded Marco of news reports he had seen about the American architect who had vanished from a luxury cruise ship years earlier. Rather than simply disposing of what might have been considered maritime debris, Marco's intuition told him that this could be important evidence, so he immediately contacted the Italian Coast Guard to report his unusual discovery. The Italian authorities, recognizing the potential significance of Marco's find, immediately dispatched a specialized forensic team to examine the suitcase under controlled laboratory conditions at the Genoa Maritime Police headquarters. When the suitcase was carefully opened by forensic experts wearing protective equipment, its contents revealed a treasure trove of evidence that instantly transformed Emily's disappearance from a mysterious accident into a clear case of premeditated murder with international implications. Protected by multiple layers of waterproof bags that had been meticulously sealed, investigators found Emily's U.S. passport, her Seattle driver's license, boarding passes from the Ocean Serenity cruise, hundreds of photographs she had taken during her Mediterranean journey, and most importantly, a detailed diary where she had documented disturbing encounters with certain crew members who had been making her increasingly uncomfortable during the voyage. The diary entries, written in Emily's distinctive handwriting, revealed that she had begun to feel threatened and unsafe during the final days of the cruise, specifically mentioning a senior security officer named Alessandro Rossi who had been following her, making inappropriate comments about her traveling alone, and persistently pressuring her to join him for private dinners in restricted areas of the ship. Even more chilling was a handwritten note dated July 15, 2020, Emily's last day alive, where she wrote, "If something happens to me, Alessandro Rossi knows the truth. I've discovered evidence of what he's been doing to other women passengers. I've hidden proof in my camera's memory card. Sarah, please don't let this go unsolved." The note also contained precise GPS coordinates that corresponded exactly to the location where the suitcase had been discovered by Marco, indicating that Emily had somehow managed to throw the suitcase overboard as a desperate attempt to leave evidence of her fate before meeting whatever terrible end awaited her. Additional items in the suitcase included Emily's expensive camera equipment with memory cards intact, her jewelry including a distinctive silver necklace that her parents had given her as a graduation gift, and most damning of all, secretly recorded audio conversations on her smartphone that captured Alessandro Rossi making explicit threats and admissions about his involvement in a systematic pattern of assaulting female passengers who traveled alone on luxury cruises throughout the EU Mediterranean region. The audio recordings found on Emily's smartphone provided law enforcement with irrefutable evidence of Alessandro Rossi's criminal activities and immediately elevated the case to the highest priority level for international law enforcement agencies specializing in crimes against tourists. The recordings captured Rossi admitting to a pattern of targeting affluent women traveling alone on cruises, using his position as security officer to gain access to passenger information, monitor their movements, and isolate them in remote areas of ships where attacks could occur without witnesses. When investigators analyzed the recordings with advanced audio enhancement technology, they could clearly hear Rossi describing his methods for disposing of victims who threatened to expose his crimes, including the use of accomplices in various Mediterranean ports who helped transport bodies and evidence to remote locations where they would never be discovered. The Italian police immediately issued an international arrest warrant for Alessandro Rossi, but discovered that he had mysteriously disappeared from his apartment in Naples just 3 days after Emily's disappearance, suggesting that he had been anticipating the possibility of being discovered and had prepared an escape plan. Through cooperation with Europol and Interpol, investigators traced Rossi's movements across multiple European countries, uncovering evidence that he had been using false identities and had connections to organized crime networks involved in human trafficking and sexual exploitation of tourists. The investigation expanded to include a comprehensive review of passenger manifests from dozens of cruise ships where Rossi had worked over the previous decade, leading to the horrifying discovery that at least 17 other women who had traveled alone on Mediterranean cruises had been reported missing under suspicious circumstances during periods when Rossi was employed on those vessels. Most of these women, like Emily, had been successful professionals from various countries who could afford luxury cruise vacations, suggesting that Rossi deliberately targeted victims whose disappearances would generate significant media attention and investigation, indicating a psychological profile consistent with serial killers who enjoy the challenge of evading law enforcement. The search for Rossi intensified when forensic analysis of Emily's belongings revealed DNA evidence linking him directly to her possessions, and when additional victims' families came forward with similar stories of their loved ones reporting uncomfortable encounters with aggressive crew members before disappearing during Mediterranean cruises. The international manhunt for Alessandro Rossi culminated 8 months later when French police apprehended him at a luxury resort in the French Riviera, where he had been working under an assumed identity as a private security consultant for wealthy tourists, apparently continuing his predatory activities while evading capture by law enforcement agencies across Europe. During his arrest, Rossi initially attempted to maintain his innocence, claiming that Emily's disappearance was a tragic accident and that any audio recordings must have been fabricated by enemies seeking to frame him for crimes he did not commit. However, When confronted with the overwhelming physical and digital evidence recovered from Emily's suitcase, including his own recorded voice describing intimate details of his crimes that had never been made public, Rossi's defense strategy quickly collapsed. Under intense interrogation by experienced investigators specializing in serial crimes, Rossi eventually provided a detailed confession that revealed the horrifying scope of his criminal activities, spanning more than 12 years of employment with various cruise lines throughout the Mediterranean region. According to his statement, Rossi had developed a sophisticated system for identifying and targeting vulnerable female passengers, using his access to passenger databases to research their backgrounds, financial status, and travel companions, then systematically stalking his chosen victims throughout their cruises. His confession described Emily's final hours in graphic detail, explaining how he had used his security access to enter her cabin, confronted her about the evidence she had collected regarding his crimes, and ultimately murdered her when she refused to remain silent about his activities. Rossi admitted to disposing of Emily's body in deep waters far from any shipping lanes, but had failed to locate and destroy the suitcase she had thrown overboard as her final act of defiance, a crucial oversight that ultimately led to his capture and the exposure of his entire criminal operation. The confession also revealed the existence of a network of corrupt crew members and port officials who had been assisting Rossi in covering up his crimes, accepting bribes to alter security footage, modify passenger records, and provide false alibis when victims were reported missing by their families. The trial of Alessandro Rossi and his criminal associates began 18 months after his capture and quickly became one of the most closely watched international criminal proceedings in recent history, attracting global media attention and highlighting the vulnerability of tourists, particularly women traveling alone, to predatory criminals operating within the cruise industry. The prosecution, led by Italian District Attorney Elena Martinelli working in coordination with prosecutors from 6 different countries where victims had originated, presented compelling evidence that included Emily's audio recordings, forensic analysis of her belongings, DNA evidence, and testimonies from family members of other victims who had suffered similar fates. The trial revealed the shocking extent of Rossi's criminal network, which had operated with virtual impunity for over a decade due to the complex jurisdictional issues surrounding crimes committed in international waters and the cruise industry's historical tendency to handle security incidents internally rather than involving law enforcement. Expert witnesses testified about the psychological profile of serial killers who specifically target travelers, explaining how Rossi had exploited the transient nature of cruise passengers and the challenges of investigating crimes that occurred far from victims' home countries. Emily's parents, David and Margaret Johnson, provided heart-wrenching victim impact statements describing the devastating effect of their daughter's murder on their family and their determination to ensure that other families would not suffer similar tragedies. The defense attempted to argue that Rossi was mentally ill and that his confessions had been coerced, but the overwhelming evidence against him, including detailed documentation of his methodical planning and execution of multiple crimes, demonstrated clear premeditation and consciousness of guilt. After 3 weeks of testimony and 5 days of deliberation, the international jury found Rossi guilty on all charges, including 17 counts of murder in the first degree, multiple counts of sexual assault, conspiracy, and racketeering related to his criminal network. The judge sentenced Rossi to life imprisonment without possibility of parole, declaring that his crimes represented an unprecedented level of cruelty and calculating evil that demanded the most severe punishment available under international maritime law. The conviction of Alessandro Rossi and the dismantling of his criminal network had profound and lasting effects on the cruise industry worldwide, leading to comprehensive reforms in security protocols, staff background screening procedures, and passenger protection measures that fundamentally changed how cruise lines approach the safety of their guests. Major cruise companies invested billions of dollars in advanced security technologies, including comprehensive surveillance systems with no blind spots, real-time passenger tracking capabilities, and direct communication links with international law enforcement agencies to ensure immediate reporting of any suspicious activities or incidents. The International Maritime Organization implemented new mandatory standards for crew member background checks, requiring psychological evaluations, periodic security clearance renewals, and continuous monitoring systems to prevent individuals with criminal tendencies from gaining positions of trust aboard passenger vessels. Emily's family used their tragic experience to advocate for stronger protections for solo travelers, working with tourism organizations and government agencies to develop comprehensive safety awareness programs and emergency response protocols specifically designed to protect vulnerable passengers. The Emily Johnson Foundation expanded its mission to include funding for advanced maritime security research, providing legal assistance to families of victims of cruise ship crimes, and lobbying for international treaties that would close jurisdictional loopholes that had allowed criminals like Rossi to operate across borders with impunity. The case also inspired significant changes in how law enforcement agencies handle missing persons cases involving cruise passengers, with new requirements for immediate preservation of evidence, comprehensive passenger interviewing protocols, and international cooperation agreements that ensure rapid response to potential criminal activities. The suitcase that Emily had thrown overboard as her final desperate attempt to ensure justice became a symbol of resistance against predatory criminals, inspiring other potential victims to document threatening behavior and maintain evidence that could be used to protect themselves and hold perpetrators accountable. The discovery also led to improvements in maritime search and recovery techniques, with new technologies developed specifically for locating evidence in deep ocean environments, ensuring that future cases would benefit from enhanced investigative capabilities. In the years following Rossi's conviction, Emily Johnson's story became a powerful catalyst for broader changes in international tourist safety and criminal justice cooperation, inspiring new legislation in multiple countries and establishing precedents for prosecuting crimes that span multiple jurisdictions in the global tourism industry. The Emily Johnson Maritime Safety Act, passed unanimously by Congress, established new federal requirements for American cruise lines operating internationally, including mandatory installation of advanced security systems, real-time passenger monitoring capabilities, and direct communication links with FBI field offices for immediate reporting of incidents involving American citizens. Similar legislation was enacted in European Union countries, creating a comprehensive framework for protecting tourists and ensuring rapid law enforcement response to crimes against citizens traveling abroad. The foundation established by Emily's family continued to grow into an international organization, providing support to more than 300 families of missing persons and funding technological innovations that have improved search and rescue operations worldwide. Emily's architectural legacy lived on through the scholarship programs established in her name, supporting dozens of young architects who carried forward her passion for creating beautiful, safe spaces that bring communities together. The cruise industry as a whole experienced a fundamental transformation in its approach to passenger safety, with new standards that required comprehensive staff psychological evaluations, continuous monitoring of crew behavior, and immediate reporting protocols that eliminated the historical tendency to handle criminal matters internally. The case also contributed to advances in forensic technology, particularly in the recovery and analysis of evidence that has been submerged in marine environments, leading to the development of new techniques that have been successfully applied to numerous other cases involving maritime crimes. Emily's camera equipment and the photographs she had taken during her final journey were preserved as evidence of her artistic talent and zest for life, with her images displayed in galleries and exhibitions that raised awareness about missing persons cases while celebrating the creative spirit that her killer had tried to destroy. The GPS coordinates that she had included in her final note became part of a digital memorial accessible online, where visitors from around the world could leave messages of support for her family and renew their commitment to protecting solo travelers and other vulnerable individuals. Today, More than a decade after Emily Johnson's tragic murder in the Mediterranean, her legacy continues to protect travelers around the world through the safety innovations, legal reforms, and advocacy programs that emerged from the pursuit of justice in her case. The Emily Johnson Foundation has expanded to operate in 23 countries, providing comprehensive support services to families of missing persons, funding advanced search technologies, and maintaining international databases that help law enforcement agencies identify patterns in crimes against tourists. The maritime safety protocols developed in response to her case have been adopted by cruise lines globally, resulting in a measurable decrease in serious crimes against passengers and improved response times for emergency situations that do occur on international waters. Alessandro Rossi died in prison in 2029 after being attacked by fellow inmates who had learned the details of his crimes against women and children, but not before providing additional information that helped solve 12 other missing persons cases and led to the prosecution of remaining members of his criminal network. The suitcase that Emily had strategically thrown overboard as her final act of courage is now displayed at the International Maritime Museum in Hamburg, Germany, where it serves as a powerful reminder of the importance of individual resistance against evil and the potential for victims to contribute to their own justice, even in the most desperate circumstances. Her architectural drawings and designs, recovered from her Seattle apartment and preserved by her family, have been compiled into a published collection that serves as both a memorial to her artistic vision and a source of inspiration for future generations of architects working to create safer, more beautiful spaces. The technological innovations developed to locate and analyze Emily's suitcase have been successfully applied to dozens of other maritime investigations, helping to recover evidence and solve cases that might otherwise have remained mysteries forever. The small fishing village of Portofino, where Marco Benedetti made the discovery that finally brought Emily justice, now hosts an annual maritime safety conference that brings together law enforcement officials, tourism industry representatives, and victim advocates to share best practices and continue improving protections for international travelers. Emily's story continues to be told in classrooms, training academies, and safety awareness programs around the world, ensuring that her sacrifice serves as both a warning about the dangers that can lurk in seemingly safe vacation environments and an inspiration for the power of one person's courage to create positive change that protects countless others from similar fates.